This week, Dan Really Likes Wine is at Curate at Ellerman House. It's the brand new restaurant at one of the most iconic luxury boutique hotels in the world. The people who've stayed in the villas and the hotel itself, it is the A-list of the A-list and me. So there's a bit of balance. What's new and exciting about this? Well, in the past, you've generally had to be a resident at Ellerman House to dine in this fabulous space and enjoy the magnificent views, the hospitality and the extraordinary wine from one of the great wine cellars of the world. But now with Curate open, Chef Kieran, together with a sommelier team par excellence, are giving the rest of the world a chance to sample just why Ellerman House, for those who know, really is as good as it gets. I've had many wonderful evenings in this particular space. I remember a great party after Watershed, had a picnic and concert out on the lawns. There have been a number of nights after the Art Angels auction, and one particular evening where it took 7 members of the Ellerman House security team to remove me from the downstairs cellar. I think I was perfectly justified, but this is the first time I've seen it in its latest iteration. Now, it's not massively different. The only addition is a few tables, because this has become one of the most exciting new restaurants in Cape Town. It's called Curate. It's the latest addition to Ellerman House, and the rave reviews I think are partly because it just looks so mesmerizing. The aesthetic is terrific, but there is also a rather good chef at the helm. Kieran, lovely to be back in this new look for this space.
Thank you, and welcome back. So just taking on from the space that has always been here, we wanted to take it a step further, turn it into a full-time restaurant. So not much has changed in terms of the room. We've just added the furniture to make it a bit more of a restaurant, yeah.
It's one I'm really excited about trying out, and one that I'm sure you were very excited to get stuck into, although as much as there is excitement for it, possibly a little nerves, because Ellerman House comes with great prestige and a great reputation. Well, what was the challenge like in embracing this?
I think there weren't too many challenges. Everyone was on board. We loved the idea, and just taking the Ellerman House concept of warm South African hospitality, adding South African art and wine. Let's do a South African fine dining restaurant where not only are the ingredients South African, so are the dishes.
You've got a South African wine here. I asked you to choose one. Now, that's not an easy task to begin with, because there is so much to decide from. Before we get into the food, let's have a look at the wine. You've opted for this bottle of Cartology. Chris Alheit is masterful with anything touching Chenin, and this is a great example.
Yeah, and I think Chenin, besides Pinotage, Chenin is quite a South African grape, also known as Steen, which we kind of like that sort of idea of South African wine and South African food. And yeah, I've been drinking this for a long time. It's been a consistently good white blend, and thought, yeah, with the dish that we're going to see now, Chenin would work really well with a bit of spice. The Semillon will help with that as well.
I know there's some food coming shortly, but let's get the wine in its own context before it has to compete with the delights of your kitchen. So this is a combination of Chenin, but some Semillon as well. What for you is the Semillon doing to make this Cartology so special?
I was just rounding it off and adding some better mouthfeel to it. So a little bit of depth, supporting that like sort of acidity, sweetness from the Chenin. Just rounding it off, making it complete.
Which is not the case of our table, because it is incomplete. It does need some food. I know you've chosen this partly because it's just a really nice bottle of wine, but you've also chosen it because there is some food that goes with it.
Yes.
What have you decided on for this?
So yeah, going with that whole South African theme and thought process, we kind of took some inspiration from the West Coast and Saldanha. So we got a nice king clip, and then we've sort of taken inspiration from a potjie. So we've got a bit of mussel, and then just for some freshness, we pickled some fennel. So it's sort of like a deconstructed, or I hate that word. It's a take on a mussel potjie, but it won't look like a mussel and fish potjie.
All right, so it is a reconstructed, deconstructed king clip dish. It sounds utterly delightful. I'm going to send the chef off, and I'm not 100% convinced by this wine, actually, so I might need to do a bit more research. Cheers. Well, that looks sensational, Chef.
Oh, thank you.
It's a work of art.
Yeah, exactly. Again, art concept house onto the plate. We're keeping it nice and simple, I think.
I love the fact you say we're keeping this nice and simple. This probably took you 4 minutes and would take me 3 months and several insurance claims to try and get right. So remind me, so I've got king clip there. What is complementing my king clip?
So we've got a nice little sort of mussel and smoked paprika sauce. Trying to keep the South African thing going. We're not allowed to import anything, so have to make everything ourselves. So instead of using Spanish smoked paprika, we've made our own. Just using chilies from Hughes Farm down the road in Hout Bay, and then smoking and drying it out and making a powder. So trying to keep everything South African from start to finish.
My very proudly South African mother lives in Belfast in Northern Ireland, where amongst the things they do not see are the sun and kingclip. And whenever she comes back to South Africa, kingclip or yellowtail are always top of her list. These are what I want. For you as a chef, what's special about this fish?
I think kingclip's pretty consistent. I mean, since I was started out, the fish options have dwindled completely in the last 20 years. So kingclip's pretty consistent. It is a quintessential South African fish. All the foreigners love it. And it's just nice and meaty and not incredibly expensive. So it kind of ticks a few of those boxes, and quite an easy fish to work with as well.
All right, well, I have my wine, which I've already sampled, and now it is time to have the food. So here we go. Chef Kieran's kingclip in a smoked paprika and mussel sauce. The sacrifices I make for television. Oh, that's glorious.
No, don't forget the wine.
I might almost ignore it after that dish. It's not wildly different, but there is an appreciable change to what you drink once you've had the dish. And I love that sense of transition that great food and wine give each other, because it does work both ways.
Yeah, very complementary. And we steam the mussels in Shannon, and there's a bit of sweet Shannon that goes into the sauce. So we kind of layer it up, and then Shannon from the wine. So trying to hit all the notes.
It's a glorious, glorious combination. I might just have to finish that off again for research purposes in a second. It's early days for Curate, but with dishes and combinations like this, you're clearly hitting the right notes as it stands. What's the horizon looking for you like from here?
Well, going to season, we can see we're going to be busy, and then just keep trying to explore more dishes and heritage, which is nice because we've got a lot of staff. It's not just my story; it's our story. So there's lots of backgrounds to bring into the menu.
All right, it's so quintessentially South African, but it's also, I think, got very much your chef's signature to it, which is fantastic. Thank you, Kieran. That's been an absolute delight. The food is, well, it's as good as I was expecting when you have the combination of Ellerman House and Kieran and his very impressive chef CV. But the wine is also a really big part. We've seen some of it in terms of the cartology, but there's a full team here at Ellerman House, and that's going to be backing up this restaurant as it gathers speed. So the right people to speak to, the sommeliers, to find out what else is in the cellar and maybe have a look at one of the most impressive treasure troves of wine in South Africa. Cheers. Right, enough of pretending that chefs are of any consequence whatsoever in a restaurant. We all know it's entirely down to the wine team, and the wine team here at Curate, not unsurprisingly given it's Ellerman House, is world class. Joe, lovely to be here in what's a relatively new space for you, not just Curate, which has only just opened, but you're 6-7 months into your tenure at Ellerman.
Yes, what a privilege to be here. It's a beautiful space. Like you mentioned, Curate just recently opened up to the public, so this is available to the public. And this is just a beautiful representation of what South Africa has to offer in terms of cuisine. You know, we focus strictly on cuisine from South Africa, as well as whether it's seasonal based or not. So yeah, very interesting to be a part of this project.
I want to ask you about the food and wine in a second, but I have to stop you with something quickly. Almost like a brilliant blend where there's a majority of one varietal and a tiny touch of another. I'm getting about a 90% South African accent and just 10% of American. Am I picking something up coming through there?
I'm trying to avoid it, but yes, you are. So I was privileged enough to spend a few years in the States, honing in on some winemaking background, but also that's where I got introduced into the hospitality side of things. So professionally, winemaker by profession, then transitioned into hospitality. I just felt there's a lot of people that feel very intimidated when it comes to wine, and just scared to ask the basic questions. So I thought, okay, if I could bridge that gap with the knowledge that I have, it would just be a better place for everyone. So yeah, that's where I got introduced into hospitality. ever since moved back to South Africa.
Well, one of my favourite elements of South African success stories is those who've gone abroad, honed their skills, broadened their horizons, but always knew where home was. And was that always the plan, to come back to use what you'd learnt and bring it back to South Africa?
Yeah, look, when I went over, it was kind of just, whatever's happening is going to happen. But you also realize there's no place like South Africa. People always say the grass is greener on the other side, but there is no place like South Africa. You don't get the culture, you don't get the people, you just can't get it out of your system, South Africa is a really beautiful country. We're rich in a lot of different things. If just one person can bring back and just create something different.
It's an apt time to be here with this new chapter unfolding, and it's one that's full of excitement because it is a brand new restaurant with a world-class chef, but also one that comes with a slight intimidation factor. You're not just walking in to be a sommelier anywhere, you're walking into Ellerman House, and that comes with a certain responsibility.
Yeah, look, I've had great support, great mentorship as well from the head sommelier. Amazing team, and that's the beautiful thing about being at Ellerman House is people want to be here. There's a passion for what we are doing. So it was a real easy fit, but also very privileged to be a part of this team. Yeah.
The unique element to this particular space is the foregoing of wine from anywhere else in the world. Paul Harris is hugely patriotic. He loves South Africa, but it's not just oh look, I'm only doing South African wine for a unique selling point or to try and pretend to be cool. I think it's a real understanding that you don't need wine from the rest of the world because South Africa just covers so many bases.
No, that's very true. South Africa is it's like I mentioned earlier, South Africa is very rich in a lot of different things, and one of them is wine. We've got fairly a lot of different regions. We've got new and upcoming producers that just pop up everywhere with great quality wines. And the biggest thing now is also focusing on terroir-driven wines, which I think is going to be the next, or is going to be the future. But you really don't need wines from around the world. You just need to know where to look in South Africa to find what you're looking for.
Tell me a little bit about the Curate experience from a wine perspective. You've got people coming in to dine, you've got a fabulous chef. Where does the food end, the wine begin? Do you work happily together? Are there furious fights in the kitchen over who gets priority on what?
No, like I said, we really respect each other's territories, but at the same time we work harmoniously together. So like I mentioned also, Curate is mostly focused on seasonal dishes. So in that way, with the broad variety of wines that we do have available, we can play around with that. And we're not in the game of buying and selling wine just to get a quick turnaround. We truly age wines where we feel it's reached its optimum potential for it to showcase itself. So yeah, we're very fortunate to play around with older vintages, younger vintages, all depending on how it will elevate the dish. Because at the end of the day, you're here for the food.
No, you're not. You're here for the wine. The food's incidental, Joe.
I'm paid to say that.
Amongst the wine is a wine that I remember with great fondness because it's made by a good friend of mine, but also because I was part of the launch event here at the very first one. In fact, we had a dinner in this very room to celebrate the first edition of the Ellerman.
Yes.
How much did you know about Erica Obermeyer before you encountered this wine?
Not a lot. I knew she made wine from the Darling region, which is where I'm from. But other than that, no, just knew she was a great winemaker, but I never really knew the whole story behind the Ellerman and Erica Obermeyer either.
Well, now of course you do, and it's best reflected in the calibre of this wine. It's a special one made for Ellerman House. And it's always an interesting one. It's a story that I've put to both Manuel Cabello, the famous South American sommelier you work with, as well as to Paul Harris. There is so much you could have done as a South African institution that Ellerman House is in terms of choosing a wine. Should we go really South African with some Pinotage or some Chenin, or should we try and replicate something great from Bordeaux or from Burgundy? And instead it's I think quintessentially South African, and it's an amalgamation of some key grapes in the South African wine story that all come together in such delightful chorus.
That is true. It's a very easy drinking wine, so it's Syrah dominated with some Grenache, Cinsault, and about 3% of Cab, depending on the vintage. But it's a very elegant wine, it's a very interesting story behind this wine. So this project started back in 2018. And, this is not a house wine. Let's just get that out of the way, right? Not a house wine. And we were looking for a wine to represent us. Now, in order for something or someone to represent you, you need to know who you are in order to be represented. So we thought, okay, we are very easygoing, not really sophisticated, very elegant. So once we knew who we were, we now had to find the grapes, that link up with that. And like I mentioned, very easygoing grapes. And great aging potential in this wine as well. You don't need to sit back and think what's happening, it's not sucking any moisture out of your mouth. It's just elegant and smooth and easy.
It's a delight to drink, and it's a delight to have it here and to know that Erica's behind it, because she's just one of the nicest people in the whole industry. Cheers, Jay.
Cheers to that.
Oh. I'll tell you what I'd love to do before you rush off to go and service some more global tourists who've come to find some fine wine. I do love the cellar. I've only been down 800 times.
Oh, nothing big.
But I'd love to wander down, because I've got one particular question I'd like to ask you, but I need to ask you that question in the cellar. So if you're up for a bit of a wander,
Why
can we
not?
head down to the cellar?
Let's go for it.
All right. If you haven't seen this cellar before, it is absolutely staggering. And although the guys who put this together for me, Alex and his crew, are internationally renowned, they are world class as a filmmaking team, even they will struggle to capture just how amazing this is. So the best thing to do is try and get to Ellerman House, but second best, come for a walk with me and Joe. So Joe, this has to be the coolest wall in all of wine. Tell us what makes this quite so special.
Well, it's a live wall, this, like we mentioned earlier in the interview, South Africa's rich in a lot of things. And, geology is one of those things. This is a visual representation of 100 of the best vineyard soils in South Africa. So each frame or each block that you see represents a different winery, and that's their soil composition.
Yeah, if you look closely, there's Rustenburg for you. I can see there's some Theleme over there, some Delagraf, Kleine Zolzer, there's that's at Morgenhof, Beyerskloof, and this is what all of our wines are coming from across the Cape.
Yeah, and two things that you probably did not see is, other than the name, the GPS coordinates is also engraved. So in case the name of the winery were to change, you
can
can't
still
change
find
the
it.
coordinates. But at the same time, also you'll see that most of these vineyards or these blocks are located where it would be, in reality. So most of them are located next to each other, which just brings in the fascination even more. It's just seeing how diverse soils are, less than a kilometer apart from each other.
And also seeing the different levels, knowing that the job the roots will have to do to maybe get through layer 1 and take on layer 2 and then give the wine the characteristics it has as a result.
Yes, and this represents about 1.5 meters, obviously in ratio. So 1.5 meters of soil depth. It's not solidified at all. It's just, with a nice fondue, that's it. This is as raw as it gets.
So it's wine meets geology meets interior design for a pretty awesome combination.
It is, and it's just the finer details. You'll also see that not all of the blocks are flush. Some of them are a little bit more standing outward, and that has to do with the height above each other. Certain wineries are a little bit elevated. They are the blocks that tend to be a little bit more outward, and the lower out you go, the more inward the blocks goes.
So my wife was looking at some rather nice paisley wallpaper for our lounge at home. I've got something different to try and convince her about. Joe, we often talk of the intersection of art and wine, and often it's via a Venn diagram with a fairly big intersection, but this really is exactly that. It's an enormous piece of modern sculpture that gives so many great bottles of wine such a wonderful home.
It does, and if you look, it's made from carbon fiber and it's in the form of a corkscrew. So this is our carbon fiber corkscrew. It currently houses around 1,530 bottles. Just red wines, and the whole idea behind this is these are all of the wines that are currently featuring on the wine list of Curate. So if you decide to grab a bottle of wine, we bring you in, you pull out the wine that you want, and then we decant it for you, should that be the case.
I know you said earlier when you first saw it how striking it was, but I've probably been in here 100 times, and every time I try and take a photo, you just can't bring out just what a majestic piece this is.
It is. It's very, very unique. And like I say, or like you say, it's It's very majestic, and at certain angles you do get to look like James Bond if you look through the carbon fiber corkscrew.
I do feel I've got a bit of a Timothy Dalton vibe going for me today.
Oh, why not? I'll go for Idris Elba.
The next one to come. All right, so this is 1,500 bottles or thereabouts, but it's certainly not the extent of the collection.
No, certainly not. Like I mentioned, this is just red wines that are currently featured. So we feel these wines that you will see in this corkscrew is currently right at its peak, or heading towards that peak. The rest of the wine is aging peacefully downstairs in the cellar. If you'd like to go check it out, I can certainly show you around.
All right, I didn't really want to, but you've persuaded me,
Very
so
well.
let's go and do that. More wine to come, but gee, how good is this? So we've descended into the cavern that is below Ellerman House. First of all, Joe, tell me about this wall behind me.
Interesting. So this all started out as a solid piece of limestone soil that was sent from Epernay, which is in Champagne. And when sculptor Angus Taylor decided to sculpt with it, he realized it's a very brittle component. So what he ended up doing is he cast bronze over it, which is this table that you see right in front of us. And the reason he chose bronze is, bronze keeps the temperature at which it's at. So as you can feel, it's a bit on the chilly side. And you'll also see that these are the bottom of Dom Perignon bottles. So the whole idea behind that is, you stick a bottle of Dom on there. Let me show you. So you'd stick a bottle of Dom Perignon on there. It fits exactly to the mold. And at the same time, it keeps it chilled.
So first of all, I thought, well, clearly somebody's had a champagne party, but they haven't waited for this to set, so it's clearly wet, and they'd messed up the whole thing. Now do I discover not only is it on purpose, but deliberately so, because the chances of knocking over bottle number 7 at 2 in the morning is less likely to happen. So this speaks to the one exception to the only South African rule. Everything else here is South African, and you do have some great South African bubbles, certainly, but you've also got some of the great champagne houses as well.
We do. Look, we're also Relais Chateau property, which is an association of individually owned boutique hotels, and it's French of origin. So it kind of ties into who we really are and what we stand for.
I think we should line up a few more and see just how many we can get rid of. The one question I really wanted to ask you, I mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to give you a minute or two to think about it, because behind you lies the rest of this cave of wine. On the horrible, horrible happenstance that a fire were to strike this great property and you had to escape with just one bottle, I'd love to know what that bottle is. So think about that for a moment. Let's head into the rest of the cellar, and then we can discover your absolute favourite.
Certainly.
The question I asked was to find that bottle of wine if you had to run off with just one in the event of a fire. How difficult that would be was made apparent by the walk-in. It's about 12 feet. It took us 8 minutes, stopping every 5 inches. Oh, there's some Newton-Johnson, there's some Rats, there's some Anthony Rupert. There are all these great wines from across South Africa, and not just so many great wines, but so many wonderful stories.
Yes, certainly. It's always a treat taking our guests down here, which is part of the Curate experience, is showcasing what we truly have to offer. And these are where the bottles are reaching their maturity age, so currently around 8,500 bottles underground.
It's an extraordinary collection. I've narrowed it down of the 8,500 to 8,412 I would take with me in the event of a fire, and then hopefully have time to come back for the family afterwards. You've got one bottle to choose. Are we in this area? We're in the right space?
In this area, yes. Yeah, it's ironically right next to you.
All right.
So it's going to be right down here, and you mentioned it earlier. It's going to be the Anthony Rupert 2015 Red Blend.
It is a fabulous wine. It's opulent, it's rich, and it's the vintage of vintages in terms of this style of wine. I think that's a good call. Although I'd probably come back shortly thereafter to find a few more of them.
I can't guarantee that will be left, my friend.
It's a great wine given to me by a great young sommelier. I'm really excited to see how this journey unfolds. I'm really glad that you've come back to South Africa. I can see the passion writ large on your face about this new project, about the restaurant, but also the cellar, about Ellerman House. It's a really exciting time to be Joe.
Thank you for once again the opportunity for featuring featuring on your show, and yeah, hopefully we can host you one day.
I look forward to it. Joe, thank you.
Cheers, Dan.
So there we go. One young, good-looking, athletic and well-built wine expert and Joe in the cellar at Ellerman House. Curate is now up and running. If you'd like to come along, in the past, Ellerman House was often just for those who were staying here. Now you've got the chance to come in from beyond the hotel realm and experience the food of Kieran, experience the wine that Joe and his team curate, and experience the Ellerman House magic. And believe me, there's plenty of it.